Um, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Audit Standards and Risk Committee. We don't have any members of the public here, so I don't think we need to do the fire notices. So we'll get straight on with the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies, Eddie?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Tedder tonight.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meetings, circulated in advance beforehand. Any comments, or are we happy as read? That was good. Thank you very much. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations to make? No, all looks good. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, public question time. Again, Eddie, I'm not aware of any public questions.
No, we haven't received any public questions, Chair.
Excellent. No public questions received. So we can go straight on to agenda item 5, which is external audit report and approval of audited statement of accounts. Are we handing over to guys on screen? Behind me, that's why. Hi, Darren. Heath, can we hand over to you to run us through your report?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So I wasn't planning to say very much to the report, the audit findings report, because 90% of its contents we presented to you at your meeting in November. What we have updated the report for are those few areas where we highlighted that work was still ongoing. And we're presenting to you the finalised position tonight. Where we've made the updates, those are in underlined text within the report, and we're happy to pick up any questions that you may have in respect of that. The key messages that we reported to you in November haven't really changed. Around the margins, there's a little bit more detail. We've managed to strengthen and refine some of our findings. The outcome is and will be, as we said, a disclaimer of opinion for 24-25. Within your papers at page 165 is included the draft wording, so you can see the nature of the opinion that will be given. And on page 169, there's also a letter of representation which sets out the things that officers say to us that will allow us to complete the audit, and that has to be minuted and recognised and co-signed by the chair of the committee. And just for members' information, just to know that we will be issuing the opinion tomorrow. So with that, I will pause, and I'm happy to pick up any questions that members may have.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Darren, and thank you, Keith and team, for all the work that's gone into preparing this. Opening up to questions from the committee. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wills, for the report. So you do say that the Council has made a lot of progress. Obviously, it's disappointing that it's still another year of disclaimed audit, because it's a long time since we had a clean audit, as you point out. So I guess my question is, when does progress lead us to the end of the journey to assurance, basically? When will it lead to a clean audit? Will it be 25, 26? And can you just summarise specifically what still has to be fixed to get us there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So members may recall at one of our very first meetings, we said we thought the regaining assurance journey was going to be 3 to 5 years. And that was based on the premise that we would be able to successfully test and complete planned audit testing of the in-year transactions. What we reported to you for 23-24, what we have reported to you for 24-25 shows that we still haven't really completed that starting point of being able to get complete comfort over the in-year accounting transactions and balances. So I can't see 25-26 being an unmodified opinion. And I think you're very much still at the beginning of the journey. As a firm, we are seeking to refine and decide how and where we can accelerate the rebuilding assurance journey. And our plan is to have for each authority an individual plan that we will bring to you that will also be based on what's happened over the last couple of years. So if I may, Councillor, I'll reserve our position until we've thought that through, and then we can have a fuller discussion when we present our thinking to you in due course.
Thank you for that answer. So you say we're still at the beginning of the journey. So the starting point, just confirm, that's what we inherited. When you became our auditors, we inherited a position historically that was causing all the difficulty basically that we're in now. And so I guess, and you've probably seen this in lots of different councils. So if this council was not approaching local government reorganisation, would there be, the issues that you've noted and have caused all the problem, would there be some sort of additional statutory intervention on the horizon?
Are you suggesting statutory intervention because of the inability to move towards an unqualified opinion? I'm just not quite sure what you're seeking, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the main problem is the financial sustainability, which is the council's greatest weakness, I imagine. But there's also things like the uncertainty on the commercial income and everything else, basically, that's preventing the clean audit.
Yes, so I don't think those elements for the financial statements audit would result in statutory intervention. If we didn't see any signs of progress or improvement, then conceivably we could exercise some of our statutory powers, which range from making statutory recommendations, which the council would have to consider, or producing a report in the public interest. I don't think, based on the work over the last 2 years, that we are anywhere near that position. And I think the progress that we've seen and reported to you for 24-25 is certainly encouraging. And if that progress is continued and, dare I say, accelerated, that bodes well for the coming years.
That's great, thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. I'm just having a look at obviously the underlying text where the report's been updated, and just looking at the disclaimed balances. So obviously, as you've said, most of it is moving in a good direction. Just looking at the traffic light system, so page 81, interest and investment income, that's the only one where I can see it's gone backwards from amber 23-24 to red 24-25. Is there any reason why that's become more difficult in terms of conducting the audit? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to be absolutely clear, the appendix and that traffic lights rating, it is there just to try and indicate where progress is or is not being made. But in giving a disclaimer of opinion, we give that across the whole statements in their entirety. We can't cherry pick that some balances or some transactions are okay and some aren't. So my answer is in that broad context. But for the particular element that you highlight, that potential regression is in respect of the issues that we found around the commercial rent income. And that's the cause and the concern associated with that area.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, and then I'll jump in with one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just on that subject. I wanted to ask specifically about the property income governance and whether it's not fully under control. So page 35 has got the underlined text. For properties managed by Praxis in 24-25 for the Square, rental cash collected of 5.3 million, I think it means, was split as follows. 2.6 million cash was transferred to the council and 2.7 million cash was retained during the year to settle expenditure incurred or to be incurred by the agent. So it sounds like that's not a normal procedure and it's not the correct way to account for it. Is that, would you agree with that? Is that what would happen in the private sector if there's a private sector landlord with an agent? Would they do something like that? And do you know what is the maximum exposure if lease incentives and rent-free periods have been understated? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Our concern was that there wasn't a clear accounting trail that the council could rely on to prepare its accounts in respect of the commercial income. It wouldn't be inappropriate for the managing agents to retain expenditure from income to offset costs. But what we would expect is that there's a clear trail to show what the gross income is and was, and clear records being provided to the council by the managing agents to show the costs incurred. Because even if the council is using managing agents, it still has a responsibility to ensure that where it's incurring expenditure, that's still appropriate, reasonable, and represents value for money. The council itself recognised it had an issue with this area and commissioned its own independent review. We've seen the outcome of that review. We weren't able to get any true comfort from our planned testing around commercial income. So we have caveated our position in the report in front of you tonight. It remains a key area to improve for 25-26 and future years.
Thank you. And the maximum exposure, do you have an idea what that would be? And if I can, is it possible, is it probable that this will be resolved by the time the council passes on this responsibility to the successor authority?
Thank you, Councillor. We didn't and couldn't determine what the maximum exposure was. We couldn't reach that conclusion. I think officers may be better placed to answer the pace of change and what's happening currently since the issue was unearthed. We will obviously try and follow that up through our 25-26 audit.
Vicky, do you want to come in on that as well?
Yes, thank you. We have, since we've had the assurance report on property, we have had a number of meetings with our managing agents and we are doing a lot of work. So we are hoping and intending that a lot of that information trail will be ready and we'll be able to provide that information for the current financial year's account. So we're currently doing quite a lot of work on it. I say hoping because you never know what's going to come out of the woodwork, but it's something that we're putting a lot of time into at the moment.
Oh, that's great. So it shouldn't be an issue by the end of 25-26.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in with a question now and sticking on the subject of property. and it's a subject that this committee's discussed before. I noticed in the underlined text that the acquisitions of the Square, 4531 Park Street and London Road have now been reclassified again as regeneration purchases. I think we've gone from being classified as regeneration to classified as investment to classified as regeneration. So I guess the first question is, are we now satisfied that that classification is correct based on the council's records? And secondly, what is the impact of the difference in classifications in layman's terms, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think that officers are comfortable that those assets were originally purchased for regeneration purposes and therefore should have been classified as property, plant and equipment. Based on what we've seen, I think we are comfortable that it's the right classification. The difference in accounting is that an asset held as an operational asset, property, plant and equipment, is valued on a current use existing value, whereas an investment property is valued on a fair value basis, so the highest and best use. In making the change in classification from investment properties to property, plant and equipment for 24-25, the assets were valued on a fair value basis. So even though the accounts have corrected the classification to property, plant and equipment, those assets are being held on a fair value basis. That by the time the decision was made for the correct classification, I think the council wasn't able to get an up-to-date valuation on the right valuation basis. And then there's a bit of a minor impact on the income and expenditure account, just the way the income from rental properties for investment properties would be classified within the statement, but it's more the balance sheet where the impact's felt.
Thank you. And if I were to sort of boil it down to its most basic level, would it be fair to say that if it were classified as an investment property, it would be a property on which the council were expecting to make some sort of profit, whereas if it were classified as a regeneration property, it would be something the council was intending to hold long-term for the benefit of local residents?
Thank you, Chair. Broadly, yes. Investment properties can be held for both capital appreciation or for income generation, whereas property, plant and equipment, its main purpose is held to deliver key services.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in with one more and then I'll shut up. It's connected, and it's just the line above it where we talk about 4551 Park Street did have a negative value of 3.5 million. Now its negative values are not permitted. It's now got a nil value. Does that at the end of the day mean that our bottom line looks £3.5 million healthier, or does it not really have an impact?
It won't have an impact on the bottom line. It changes the balance sheet, and there may have been some amendments that wash through the income and expenditure account, but it won't change the value of your assets, or it won't result in a gain from the asset.
Thanks. So we haven't found 3.5 million down the back of the sofa. That's disappointing. But anyway, as promised, I will shut up now. Councillor Benn.
Thank you. Just as I've been away, and I'm a bearer of very little brain, could I confirm that 4551 Park Street is the Army and Navy building? House of Fraser. Yeah, okay. And the other one, 4531, is that the NatWest?
I think that is that a typo? Is it supposed to say 45 to 51 in both?
Oh, okay, so it's not 45, 31.
I suspect.
And 123 to 183 London Road is basically the strip along the A30,
I believe so. That's what we colloquially call London Road Block.
the
isn't it?
London Road block.
Yeah, that's what we call it, yeah.
Okay, so we're basically talking about the Army and Navy, the London Road block. Okay, fine, thank you. That's all I wanted to just get it clear.
Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to touch on the section entitled Short-Term Debtors Continued. So I think it's page 36. There's a recommendation to ensure the key system reports from the Northgate system are run at the 31st of March as part of the accounts preparation. It's a request in there. Is that because it's not been done previously? Would be my first question.
Yes, Councillor, that's right.
Okay, so that's an improvement. Good to see, although somewhat awkward. Completeness testing of income and debtors. So you pulled a sample, so it's a substantive audit. So you pulled 50 samples. You've got evidence for 47 out of 50. You've got 2 failed samples, one for £84,000. And another sample for a best part of £250,000 where you were unable to conclude due to insufficient evidence. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because they are not insignificant sums of money to have insufficient evidence on. That's the bottom of page 36.
So I don't have the detail for those. Keith might be able to help me out shortly. But for the larger one, because we couldn't conclude on it, we can't reach a judgment to say whether it was right or wrong. For the 2 that we say were clear fails, that we were quite comfortable that they were inappropriately accounted for, and this is testing the accounting of the income into the right financial year. So was it recorded in 24-25 or was it recorded in 25-26?
Okay.
Keith, do you know the detail?
Thank you. I believe they were linked to the property income issue. Hence, we concluded we weren't able to be satisfied that the income was in the right period.
Councillor Lee, does that answer your question? Or do you want...
I think, would you expect ultimately to get to an answer for these items, given the sums of money that are referenced there? Because if you're pulling a sample of 50 and 3 fail, then that's quite a high failure rate, given it's only a sample of 50. It's what, sort of 5-6%. So it could indicate sort of far more substantial underlying problems with financial accounting.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we would. If we were in a normal situation, and we weren't in a disclaimer position, we would have to reach a point where we were able to say either it was right or wrong, and then think about the implications of the error, if it was an error, and undertake some analysis to determine whether it was indicative of a wider problem or not. And if it was a wider problem and it was material, if it was likely to feature an impact on the planned audit opinion. So you would expect in a normal year, in normal circumstances, to progress and complete all sample testing to allow firm audit conclusions to be drawn.
So in summary, that would be a failure to get an audit opinion.
It could result in a qualified audit opinion if it wasn't resolved.
So unless they're resolved, if we were in an ordinary year, that would be a qualified audit opinion.
If it was determined to be material to the audit, yes.
Cool. Okay, and it remains unresolved as far as you're aware at the moment?
It remains unresolved, and it will remain unresolved for the 24-25 audit.
Okay, that's disappointing. Thank you.
Do you want to come in on that, Vicky?
I'll just come back on a couple of those points. The Northgate system report, I think it was where Easter was, so they ran the report a couple of days later. In terms of the samples, yes, ordinarily we would expect 100% to be able to do the samples, and it is disappointing, but reflecting on the fact that I think less than 50% was completed the year before, it is a huge achievement, and the fact that they are property related and there's a lot of other things in here about the property, then it's kind of linked through to that governance as opposed to the whole council governance.
Same topic or different topic?
Same.
Yeah, go in there.
Thank you. We've got a similar situation with 10 out of 12 with issues around a sum totalling 155,000, which seemed part of a 227 balance, and then another reference there, I think, to £500,000. Again, would these have an impact on giving the council a qualified opinion in ordinary times? What I'm trying to get to is, are we hiding behind things, or have we still got structural fundamental problems in the finances?
Thank you, Councillor. So I don't know individually if all that we're reporting to you here as issues would result in a qualification to the audit opinion, because we haven't been able to conclude. So if we had been able to conclude on areas that were errors and they were material and we were clear, then we would have reflected that within the disclaimer of opinion as an additional disclosure. But because we haven't and couldn't, we've rested behind the broad disclaimer of opinion. If we were in a normal year and we identified errors of £500,000 just from sampling, we would then seek to understand how widespread those errors were. And if we believed they were material, then we would reflect that in a qualified audit opinion of some sort.
I appreciate your time, thank you. My observations drilling down into these, it's absolutely critical. We know where the finances are at, given we're going through this M&A situation. We can't hand over a mess to a subsequent authority.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I agree with that. It's certainly important to get to the bottom of these things. Councillor Betton, and then I'll come to Councillor.
Thank you. It's just a point of clarification. I'm sitting here realising that Mr. Scott and I are the only people who were here in 2019. And I think it's worth stating that as far as I'm aware, and correct me if I've got this wrong, the London Road block was never, ever an investment. It was always a regeneration. Right from the purchase of individual units along that. So, you mentioned it going classification. That applies to the town centre, the square, but not, I think, to the London Road block.
Thank you, Councillor Betton. I'm happy to correct the record if I was incorrect there. It's always good to have experience from previous.
No,
I'm happy to take your word for it. I don't know. I was probably grouping all three, but mainly talking about the square.
Yeah.
So apologies.
It is confusing.
Apologies if I was not sufficiently clear. Councillor Wilson, sorry, you've been waiting a while.
Thank you, Chair. And it's exactly this subject that I want to come back to as well, about to be clear about the valuation of the properties and how that changes when the classification changed from investment properties to regeneration. So just to be clear what you said earlier, Mr. Wells. So when there were investment properties, they were valued at the fair value method. And now that they're regeneration properties, they're going to be valued at existing use, which is going to be lower, but we don't know what that level is because it came up at kind of late notice for this year. So does that mean there's going to be an overstatement of their valuation in the 24-25 accounts? That's first question. I'll leave that.
Thank you, Councillor. So your understanding of the various valuation bases is correct. What I couldn't say to you is that it would the change of a valuation to an existing use basis valuation would result in either a lower or higher valuation. That will be subject to the valuer's judgment, which we would also then test. But I wouldn't be able to predict what the impact would be. The valuation, there's a lot of commonality between the various valuation bases for fair value and for existing use value. So it's conceivable that the valuation could be the same. Equally, it's conceivable that it could be lower.
And is it conceivable that it could be higher based on existing use?
I think it's unlikely it would be higher.
Yeah, thank you. And just one more point on this. When it was changed in 22-23, that would probably then lead to a change in the valuation. Is that correct? Because it would be going the other way around?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's been the problem. I think even when, I think I'm right in this, I think even when the assets were first purchased, they were valued on a fair value basis, even though they were classified as property, plant and equipment. And I think in all the intervening years, regardless of the classification in the accounts, I think they've always been valued on a fair value basis.
Vicky, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, that's correct. When we looked back to when they first came out of the JPUT and onto our books, it has always been valued at fair value. So there was an incorrect value right from when it came onto our books. We just as an information point, the valuation for another asset changed from fair value to existing use value, and the valuation didn't change. And we spotted that much earlier in the process. So, I mean, it's down to the valuers and as to what that would be.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, did you want to come in on that?
I think I've reread the piece that Councillor Betton was referring to, and I think it now makes sense. My only observation was, I'm sure we found, or I was certainly given a copy of the asbestos survey for the House of Fraser building. I think that was due to be published by the council. That's probably a different matter for a different time.
I'm not aware of that, so yeah, I think that's a different matter for a different time. I've not seen that. So. Thanks. I'm going to come back in on my favourite topic, which is MRP, because I think when I see issues with councils, often it starts with the MRP. And I just wonder if you could just talk me through the underlying wording and the key observations on page 26, where we talk about the annuity method typically deferring repayment into the future, and also excluding any potential refurbishment or capital works in future which will attract MRP. It sounds a little bit like delaying the problem or pushing things out. Could you just explain a little bit more about the annuity method and any potential impact of not including potential refurbishment or capital works?
Thank you, Councillor. I might turn to Keith to see if he's able to help me with this one. Keith?
So within the guidance, there are several options available, and the annuity one is one of them. The way the method works is looking at a project and our income for certain projects where the annuity method is ideal for. Will profile the income in a manner where that income will increase over time. So it's specifically ideal for certain projects like regeneration. However, in that case, as for instance, as the council sets a provision aside, that provision increases over the years of any capital investment. In some cases, for instance, with other methods, for instance, where it might be a straight line method, that provision is constant over the life of that asset. So with the annuity method, there will be a bigger provision later down the years as opposed to earlier when the project or the capital investment is made. In terms of capital additions, as those are capital in nature, those will need to be provided for with an additional MRP charge. So therefore increasing that need to add more, to increase the provision further down the line.
Yeah, Vicky.
Thanks, Keith. The audit, obviously, that's a high-level perspective, and as I always do, I always come in on this point as well. We do produce our MRP schedule down to the bottom level per capital scheme or asset that generated that borrowing requirement. We've reviewed the remaining asset life for those individual assets as at 31st of March compared to the valuation that the valuers have put on it. The vast majority of those, the valuation is higher, or the useful remaining life that the valuers have put on it is higher than what we have in our remaining MRP schedules. Some of it's quite significant. So we do look at it. So we have got that mixed approach as well. A lot of the earlier, a lot of the stuff that's in the schedule for the MRP is related to a lot of that regeneration and continually look at. And I say we do have a mixed approach, and we do continuously have discussions with Grant Thornton about it. So it's definitely an area that does get quite a lot of scrutiny as well.
Thank you. That helps with my understanding. And just in a linked question, on the table that says top 10 schemes by MRP charge, as you'd expect that the MAL is number 1. Number 2 says refuse trucks. What is that? What is that? And why is that our second largest project? I mean, yeah, I assume so. I'm just surprised that they're that expensive. But fair enough. Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying my understanding, members of the committee. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just sort of skipping on to the accounts themselves. So it's page 104 of the agenda pack. The title is Narrative Statement. So there's a table, and then underneath the table, the second sentence says, interest payable was £4.7 million over budget due to higher interest rates. So it's not really due to higher interest rates than was expected at the budget, because when we did the budget, the interest rates that actually happened weren't substantially different. It was because when we did the budget, we had no idea how much the council was paying in interest. It's been restated on page 124 that the previous year's interest payable was 5.5 million. So if we'd had something like that in the budget, it wouldn't have been a 4.7 million over budget. So wouldn't it be more correct for that sentence to say something like, due to the interest payable being incorrect in the budget?
Vicky, do you want to come?
Yeah, so there's a slight complication in this particular one, shall I say. So we, as been reported through to this committee, we restructured our market loans in the year, and that then generates some more lovely local authority accounting things that we need to do. So that figure that's in the narrative report, we should have split it out, includes a loan modification amount that we have to do for accounting purposes. So the actual cash amount is different. That's like a non-cash amount. It gets quite techy.
Sorry, I think this was another question that I was going to ask that you've answered, but I want to go back to, so thank you for that. So I wanted to ask that one. But it's the point on page 124 that I was talking about was the restatement of the interest payable by the council, not interest received. So the interest payable in 23-24 was 5.5 million, and I think that's restated from an amount of 1 million, because at that point we just didn't know, and for years the council just hasn't known how much interest it was paying on a yearly basis. So if we'd had that figure, 5.5 million for 23-24, then the 24-25 budget would have had something similar, you know. So it wouldn't have been such a shock to see interest payable line of 6.8 million, which is on page 104, that was the shock that when we discovered that. So I'm just querying whether the reason given underneath for that big change would have, it's not really to do with the interest rates changing, it's to do with the budget being wrong because of the historical problem of not knowing how much interest the council was paying. Does that make sense?
Does anyone want to? Vicky, do you want to come back on that, or?
Yes, I suppose it's a mixture. Yeah, the budget was lower, and obviously we've rehearsed that many times. And I think what we would have put in the budget would still have been lower than what we've outturned that, but obviously not by such a large amount. But yes, you're right. That's yeah, that isn't quite. It's a little bit misleading, that sentence. I agree.
Yeah, I just think it'd be more value to the public to express it that way, because I know interest rates have gone up, but difference between the time of the budget and what actually happened, it wasn't materially changed.
Okay, noted. Does anyone have anything further they wish to raise on this report? Looks like that's all. Well, Diane, Keith, thank you once again for joining us and answering all of our questions and all the efforts that have gone into preparing the reports. Obviously, you are welcome to stay should you so wish, but I understand very much if you wish to depart at this stage. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
I just want to say, obviously, for the record, that actually I'm really quite proud of the team as to where we've come. The progress we've made is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, a lot of hard work has gone into this. Yes, we've got a lot more to do, but we did start from a position where we had to do a lot of work. So yeah, just to sort of highlight my personal thanks to everybody for all the efforts. It's shown in the report that the progress we've made is fantastic.
Thank you, Vicky, and I think all the committee would agree that thanks to the efforts of the staff, I think obviously our job here is to kind of scrutinise a little bit and get into the weeds and maybe point out where there are things to look at, but that often means that we don't comment on all of the good things that are going on. But it is very much appreciated by all of us, I'm sure. Thank you, absolutely. Right, on to business, which Eddie has just reminded me that we're supposed to vote on this, because we don't usually vote at this committee, and therefore I sometimes forget these things. So there's a recommendation on page 9, basically to note this report and to approve the statement of accounts. I won't read it all out because hopefully everyone can read it. But if I could put that to a vote, all those in favour? Sorry. No. Yes, I forgot about that.
Are you here on behalf of Councillor Taylor? We're just checking.
That was carried unanimously, which is good. Okay, on to agenda item 6, which is the 25-26 Capital and Investment Report. I believe this is the same report that was at PNF a couple of weeks ago, so obviously many of you would have already seen it, but also comes to this committee. Vicky, I don't know, do you want to present?
Yes, yeah, it's a slightly different version to what was at PNF committee. The capital sections are all the same, but this report goes into more detail on the treasury management side than that report. It will go on to the executive to make the decision on the reprofiling of the capital programme, essentially. So I won't sort of dwell on it as most of you have seen most of it already, but the position at the end of December, the borrowing is currently lower than the start of the financial year and investments higher. That position will change as we move towards the end of the financial year, as we talk about our famine period in February and March, because people generally pay council tax over their 10 months. Borrowing interest is broadly projected to be in line with the budget, and investment income slightly higher. So I open the floor to any questions.
Any questions from the committee on this report? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you for the report again. It gets clearer and easier to understand each time round. So, and I like the benchmarking section as well. I don't think we had that in previous versions. There's a question about, so it's page 190, goes on to 191, the table about vacancy levels and percentages. I'm just wondering, is there any sort of allowance or account taken of the lease incentives that are used, or the rent-free periods? Are they counted as vacant, or if the unit's occupied, even if they're paying no rent, is it counted as not vacant?
I don't know the answer for sure. I don't think they're counted as vacancy because they are occupied. So it's more, I suppose, the tenancy as opposed to the money side on that particular table.
Yeah, thanks. Because obviously the lease incentives we talked about earlier, and the sort of the difficulty with the commercial income and assurance of it. So this is the same, potentially, could there be the same sort of problem that we talked about, that the auditors couldn't verify the agent income?
The lease incentives is an area where we need to do some more work on it. We weren't accounting for it correctly in the past. We were doing it on a cash accounting basis as opposed to, I suppose, an accruals accounting basis, where we have to smooth the income out in the accounts. But obviously there's quite a lot we need to unpick on the rental income as a whole to satisfy the auditors, and that's part of the detailed work that we're doing at the moment. So hopefully we will have full transparency on that.
Yes, Councillor McIntyre.
I was just going to say that I know it's been referenced that there was an assurance piece of work on the property work stream, and a lot of those potential challenges have been looked at and addressed. So there is work ongoing so that the potential of cut-off challenges or misaccounting or not being quite clear is fully underway, and I think that there has been quite a lot of work and traction by the council on achieving that.
Yeah, thanks. It's good that we kind of know the scale and it's being rapidly worked on, because I think this is something that could be really important for passing on to the successor authority. It's a completely different bunch of people who have to deal with this. Obviously, it has to be clear and compliant. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why we've done the review and we're doing the work now. I'm particularly passionate about handing the council over in the best place we can possibly be. And this, you know, we've got a lot of work to do before we'll be comfortable that actually the records aren't there, because it's just not right to hand over that where it's just, you know, giving them the problem. So that's why we're particularly geared up to sort some of these things out as best we can.
Yes, I'll jump in with a question, which is a fairly simple one on our just the total debt number that's used for the gearing figure. It shows a £14 million reduction in total debt over 9 months, which is quite a lot. I'm just wondering how that's been achieved.
That's just the balance of short-term debt. So that is the one
so
that the reduction will be short-term. Yeah, so ultimately that will fluctuate, which is why I've said that will go back up towards the end of the year.
Thanks. Councillor Lee, as he hasn't asked yet.
Yeah, I think you half touched on my question. So it's the table on page 180, isn't it, where you've got 31st of March 25 debt 183.4 mil, and then 31st of December is 169.92 mil, which makes you think we've paid down a massive amount of debt. So I was getting very excited, but I'm guessing I've been kind of, it's not the panacea I was excitedly expecting. So where do you expect it to land, above or below 183.4, given we're selling off lots of stuff?
That all depends when we get those capital receipts in. So assuming we only get the capital receipts in that we've currently received and don't get any more, then I would expect it to be around about that same figure. If we get some capital receipts in with enough time to do something with it, then I would expect that to come down. So it's all around the timing, and obviously we haven't got a huge amount of time before the end of the financial year.
So debt has stabilised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor
That sounds
McIntyre.
promising.
My only other comment on that is, obviously, when we do receive the capital receipts, we need to make a decision, well, the council needs to make a decision as to how best to utilise those capital receipts. So it may not necessarily be the right thing to do to pay off the borrowing at that point, but that would be a decision that Section 151 makes. So the sales that we're making for the assets that aren't actually working for the council may not all go to this, because that might not be the best thing for it if we've got other capital projects that need funding, for example.
I completely agree, hence my observation, it's stabilised, which I think is that key message. If we get to the end of the year and it's stabilised, that will be a good space to be.
It has, but as part of the budget reports, we are expecting debt to increase as we are using our reserves, because then we don't have the cash. So, and obviously, you know, we're spending. So where we've got a projected budget gap per year of around 8 million, not for 26, 27, you know, for future years, and because we've been drawing down. So hopefully it will be slowly increasing, but if we get capital receipts in, hopefully that will allow it to stabilise a bit.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just turning to the capital programme, so that's at the bottom of page, well, the summary of it at the bottom of page 177. So there's forecast to be quite a lot of slippage, which, you know, is not unheard of. It happens every year. So, and it happens, I think, in a lot of other authorities as well. See it in Surrey Police too. So, is the reason for that just a capacity problem, or is it governance, or and are there projects which are slipping through multiple years that perhaps aren't ever going to happen? And just if I can add a sort of fifth question on top of that, future MRP, is it based on the budget or on the kind of actual outturn on capital? Thank you.
Yes, it is. When interest rates, you know, were lower, no one wanted the capital programme to be spent because we all wanted to get that investment income, and now they're much higher. We want them to spend it because obviously we don't want the borrowing cost. So the tone has changed a bit. A lot of what is being reprofiled is in train, some of the bigger ones, and it is a case of timing. So it is kind of on an individual basis. Yes, there is quite a lot of slippage, but it's more important to understand the reasons for that slippage. So like I say, 3.5 million in paragraph 3.6, the Square and Frimley Park Lodge resurfacing, they're in train. We've had the tenders, they're on site, but it's just the timing of when they could get on site, or when the tenders are done. So there is quite a bit for that. So that's why I focus more on why. In terms of the minimum revenue provision for future, the budget is based on the projected outturn at the time. So based on this position, actually, there was enough time to change it. So we work out, we estimate what we think is going to be in next financial year, and how we're going to fund it. If there's capital, we estimate capital receipts, and then it'll be that net position that we budget on MRP. So we're not over, budgeting based on gross spend or anything.
Thanks. That's makes total sense. So what about in the MTFS for the following year? Would that be based on the projected capital programme for the next year as well?
So we can only include estimates based on what is in our current programme or our approved, 5-year position. We can't say we always spend X amount every year or anything like that. So it does have to be on what is kind of approved. And that is based on, this is the programme at the moment, and this is the profile that we're sort of suggesting. We have challenged some of these numbers and said, is that the right number in the right year? And at the moment, that's what is being planned.
So then if there was more slippage, then the MRP forecast for future years might be too high?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Councillor McIntyre, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you. I was just going to also say, ahead of the budget, we've had a number of meetings on the capital programme. I think it's my most frustrating commentary every time we do a quarterly report on the fact that we're having to reprofile things. Having said that, though, when we go through the budget process, we do put a lot of scrutiny on whether or not these are the right projects to go through. And because of the way the process works, if we can put it in the budget process and have it all approved through that, and then we can obviously, we know what our spending is going to be, we know what our borrowing is going to be, we can put together a really good budget and MTFS. It then allows the services to then go ahead and start that work. It gives them the permission to do that. If they have to keep coming back every time there's something they need to do, it adds delay into the process. So whilst we do put a fair amount of challenge into whether it can be delivered, whether it should be delivered, what's the right time of the year for it to be delivered, there probably never will be sufficient capacity within the council to be able to deliver it all at the same time. So there will always be that element of reprofiling, and things change, don't they? I mean, we have some rubbish weather, you can't do a certain project. The other thing was that we did talk last week about for the budget for this year, whether or not there are any projects that will be reprofiling, have been for a number of years, that are just not going to happen, or are there because we believe it should be there, but actually it's unlikely to come out. So there has been additional scrutiny, I think, this year in terms of what is going to go into the budget. But it is frustrating, but I've come to the conclusion that it is the right way to do it, because it's then transparent and it allows officers to get on with the work that they need to do to bring the projects in.
So I guess it's the way you have to do it, so to allow for the maximum, the whole capital programme to potentially be delivered, which is the maximum, but in reality it's going to be an overestimate of what the capital programme is, because it can't all be achieved, as we've seen. So that means there's going to be an overestimate of MRP, an overestimate of interest payable and debt level and things like that structurally in the forecast. Is that right?
I mean, that will always make it sound like we're going to deliver good news at the end of every year. I'm not entirely sure that's also true. What it does allow us to do is to build up a view of what borrowing we will need during that year if we're able to deliver all this. Now, when we do go through the process of looking at the projects, there is a belief that they are all going to be delivered at some point in that year. So it will all depend on where they are in the process. And as Vicky said, or Mr. Radford said, how long it takes to get the tenders in and all the rest of it. So, but then you also have to take into account that costs also go up. So there's contingency built in as well, which generally always gets utilised. So I think what I'm saying is that, yes, there is the potential for it all to be over budgeted for, if you like, but in reality that doesn't particularly happen in terms of the interest because payments. And I don't think we've seen when we do the outturn reports that the significant swings or any significant movement is due to capital, particularly. There are some upsides and some downsides, but they're not massive.
Thank you. Councillor Lee?
Thank you. A couple of questions. I raised an eyebrow at installing EV chargers in Knoll Road, given we're going to get abolished. That seems a bit of a waste of money. Maybe that's not going ahead now, hence the changes. More importantly, is touch on the next one. So I noticed there Works JD Sports the Square reprofiled to 27-28. So I presume, does that mean that the JD Sports are going to do something in 27-28? And then the second one was I noticed the controversial St Catherine's Sang is listed in there in our capital programme. I'm assuming that's not our money to put a Sang in place for a developer. A developer's given us money, I'm guessing. What I wanted to check was there's no interest being paid by us. Any costs for that would presumably be borne by the developer for the Sang.
Yes, we don't know what's going to happen with that unit. That was discussed at the last executive. So we're moving the money back because it could happen at a future date. So we're not quite sure. At the moment, we haven't got any firm plans as to whether that will or won't happen, or something else may happen. The Sangs, no, that won't be ours. That'll be funded. Obviously, this is showing the gross spend, so there will be the funding for that from reserves contributions that we've received.
It's just that if you look at that snip, you could easily misinterpret that to the council paying for the Sang, and given how much of a hot potato it is, it's something that perhaps I thought I'd just raise to make sure it's qualified and not misused later.
Yeah, this is obviously about the gross spend. So obviously we do gross spend, gross income. So this is about making sure the expenditure's in the right place, and obviously the funding will follow that. So there's other tables, and certainly it's much clearer in the budget report because that's looking at all the future years. This is obviously just looking at this financial year. For instance, the Frimley Park Lodge, that's funded as well in the main. So yeah, I can understand that. But that's, essentially.
Funded in the main or fully funded?
I think it's fully funded. I think it's...
We can go into that,
yeah.
Because it's a budget.
I know, I'm in the Frimley Lodge Park comment in relation to Frimley Lodge Park resurfacing works.
If it's not fully, it's quite a lot funded, but I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah.
Okay. It would be good for someone to come back to me on that.
I can check the budget report, which it's been published last night, so I can check for you.
Thank you. Any more from the committee on this item? No? Then on to the final item for tonight, which is the work programme. So it's been circulated in advance. Our next meeting on the 24th of March, and as you'll see, we've got quite a packed agenda for that meeting. Eddie, you want to comment on that?
Yes, thanks committee and thanks chair. Since that was circulated, there is one change to report. So now on the work programme, there is a local partnerships property portfolio management review report. We can I can sort of tell members what that is if they need to be told. And the monitoring officer's annual report, as a result, has actually been moved to July, simply to free up space on a busy meeting.
Thanks, Eddie, and yeah, that was, we discussed that previously, didn't we? So that's all fine by me. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have checked, and Frimley Lodges is fully funded.
Thank you very much. Any points on the work programme? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just wondering if we know if the 24th of March is within the pre-election period.
It'll be close. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure.
can have a look now.
I think we'll have to look that one up.
Even if it was, I'm quite sure that this would count as business as usual.
Yeah, no politics. Will have to be on our best behaviour if it is. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Back in October last year, a recommendation was passed as a resolution by full council in relation to the unparish parts of the borough, and point B says the consultation includes a direct marketing campaign by way of distribution of leaflets, plural, to all households in the unparished area. Now, my understanding from the Constitution is that full council is sovereign at that point in terms of its direction for an action to be carried out. I'm slightly concerned, having received reports as recently as today, that various leaflets about a CGR telling residents it closed on last Monday are being put through households' letterboxes, which would, to me, tend to imply that it's running contrary to a resolution of full council. Now, my understanding when we start sort of getting into the barrels of the Constitution, potentially that would have to come back to full council to be undone or dealt with, and I'm guessing the next full council is budget council, which could get particularly messy. I'm wondering perhaps if we could ask the internal audit function to perhaps investigate this. In particular, I think it'd be quite crucial to understand the role of the delivery company, how it was managed and controlled, and in particular whether we paid any money, and if we have paid any money, whether we're looking to engage lawyers to recover that money, and potentially any risk for damages, because of course I think thinking this one through, and this is where my concern comes in, the CGR doesn't appear to have been conducted in accordance with the process laid down from the resolution from full council. So I think that leads to a number of potential risks to the council. We've obviously got a reputational risk, which I think we'll start to see play out as decisions are made and members of the public on both sides of the argument get upset in different ways. I think there's a potential risk of legal action to contest the result because it's not been carried out with the process that was laid down at full council, which I think is quite serious. And it's then understanding, given a decision has been made and laid down as a resolution at full council, what are the next steps in that process if that resolution has been breached? So I think it's perhaps something from a risk perspective and an audit perspective, and perhaps even a standards perspective that's quite serious and lands at this committee. I know privately people have suggested it should go to P&F, which obviously your good self and Councillor Garrett can perhaps have a debate over. But it does seem quite serious to me in terms of the fact that a resolution laid down by this council at full council doesn't appear to have been followed.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, and thank you for flagging that you were going to ask that in advance to me. I am going to say something unusual. I pretty much completely agree with what you've just said. When I vote in a full council meeting, I'm usually not on the winning side in this council, it has to be said, but I want that vote to count. And I, believe that the public have an expectation that when things are passed by their councillors, they're implemented as stated. So I agree with you, and thank you for raising it. I'm trying to think through what the next step should be. I mean, I suppose I could write on behalf of this committee possibly to Nathalie to ask her to look into what's gone on and try and find out and get to the bottom of it. I don't have an answer because I don't know what's gone on and I'm not into the weeds.
Can I request that you write to the internal auditors and ask them to investigate, because I think it's quite serious.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to take that up. Assuming obviously the rest of the committee don't think that's a terrible idea. Councillor Wilson.
Can I suggest an amendment to that we concentrate just on the unparished areas, because there isn't really a problem with engagement in the parished areas that we're engaged?
I mean, my view would be it needs to be looked at as a whole because, and I understand why you've raised that point, but I suppose obviously we know that there's one village where, as in Windlesham, where engagement has been very high. I don't know about other areas within that area. So that's all I'm thinking, but...
Chair, I think the monitoring officer...
Yeah, Nathalie, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just come in at that point. We have already started an investigation into what's happened with the company that were instructed to distribute the leaflets. So we're in the process of doing that now. So can I just ask that officers undertake an investigation and report back, setting out what has happened? That would answer your question, Councillor Lee.
I think it needs external auditors, or we use the whistleblowing policy to ask the external auditors to investigate.
I mean, my instinct is that it would be looked into internally before we got to that stage, no?
With the internal auditors, absolutely.
Well, I can ask our internal auditors to, our internal audit service has been outsourced to SIAP, but I don't see what they would be able to do that we wouldn't be able to do as officers, which is to speak to the company that were instructed to distribute the leaflets and find out exactly what's happened. I'm not sure what powers or influence they would have beyond officers.
Well, it depends who was managing that function, because obviously officers were managing the function. And if you take the further step back, full council's sovereign and full council has instructed actions to be carried out which haven't been carried out.
Can I respond to that? Yes, so there was a resolution at full council which officers put into motion. What we're trying to do now is understand what happened through the company that we asked to distribute the leaflets to, and we are looking at what legal redress can be put in place, because we're not happy, obviously, with the service that we've received. So that instruction is with my legal team at the moment. We're investigating what legal action we can take against that company. So that's one thing that we're already doing. So in the course of doing that, we are finding out in detail where the leaflets were distributed and what happened, through that process, and we're looking at that very carefully.
And I understand that, but obviously it's a recommendation, it's a resolution from full council, and if that resolution then isn't carried out, it's where that lands next. So does that then come back to full council for review, say, for example, at Budget Council? Because, of course, there was a very clear undertaking there, B, the consultation includes a direct marketing campaign by way of distribution of leaflets to all households in the parish. And it's very clear it says all households.
I would argue that was never going to be able to be done. We could never have guaranteed that every single household would receive a leaflet. It's just impossible.
But that concern, if it was an illegal resolution, should have been raised prior to the council voting on it at full council, which it wasn't.
I think we're straying into slightly different territory from where we were originally, which is let's work out what's gone on, and then we can take it from there. I think that's where my mind is. But Councillor Quinn's been waiting very patiently.
Sorry, Chair, can I also say that under the legislation with regard to CGR, there is no requirement to distribute leaflets to each household. So in terms of the CGR process, I would say that what the council has done is within the requirements of the law. So for any judicial review that came forward, we would be justified in what action we've taken, in that we distributed leaflets, there was information on our website, there was information left at libraries and other public places, and it was also publicised on social media. So I think we went above and beyond what is required under the legislation and guidance in terms of publicising the CGR process. So I am not concerned as monitoring officer and a solicitor that the council would be unsuccessful if
I
challenged
hear
on
you,
that.
but that's not what was in the resolution that was passed by
Councillor,
council.
we will come back to that, but Councillor Quinn's been waiting for ages, so I'm going to let him come in now.
Yeah, well, just a couple of points. I'm sure. So obviously, motions are sovereign. You've made a good point about that, Councillor Lee. So obviously, if you did want to bring a motion to full council, I think maybe the deadline's passed. Maybe it's too late now. But obviously, you could bring another motion that then binds the council to investigate this. And I was going to say, although it's been mothballed, obviously here with the chair of the governance working group. So you raised an interesting question about how motions are enacted after they're passed and how that's fed back to full council. I think that'd be a great thing to raise with Councillor Wilson. And obviously, if the governance working group's unmothballed, that can be something that could be looked at there.
Thank you. Councillor Benn?
Thank you. I think it's more of a question rather than of whether we are in compliance with the legal requirements. We determined to ask all of the residents whether they wanted a town council, a parish council in the unparished areas. Those leaflets are dropping through letterboxes now post the closing date. That makes us look stupid.
Quite right.
It totally defeats the object of doing it in the first place. If it was worth doing in the first place, it's worth doing right, and it's still worth doing in terms of asking people, like the citizens of Camberley, who will, after 2027, have nothing local to put their thoughts, look at their issues, other than West Surrey, located we know not where. If it's worth doing it correctly, and it's worth asking those questions of people. And we haven't. I don't care why we haven't is reason A, B, C, D, or E. What we need to do is get some mechanism to make sure those questions are asked, and the feedback from the people is taken into account of whether they want a town council in Camberley or not. You can't do that on the basis of an out-of-date thing that drops through people's letterboxes and they look at it, oh, it's gone past. That's the issue.
Thank.
Chairman, can I just remind the committee that the ability to do a CGR is always there by petition. So if the unparished areas feel strongly about it, that they can petition the council or the new authority, to undertake a CGR. And there's a requirement under the legislation to undertake reviews every 5 to 10 years anyway. So it's not a done deal. It can be changed in the future.
You're talking about the legal side of things, and I appreciate you are correct. From a resident's point of view, it's a nonsense.
Thanks, Councillor Benn. I know people feel very strongly about it. I think that there are two issues here. I think there's the principles that you just put out, but I think the key principle and why Councillor raised this in the first place is that we as councillors voted on something and it doesn't appear to have happened in the manner in which we voted on. And I think the first step is to find out what's happened, and then we can work out how to respond. Because at the moment, I don't know what's happened, and I don't think many of us know exactly what's happened. So let's find out what happened, and then let's review. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your support. I think the key issue here is it's not about the outcome, it's about the fact that the public feel let down. And it's very clear. You receive a leaflet about a consultation through your letterbox, you look at the leaflet and find it's closed, and that's the first time you find out about it. And those people, it's not my words, they say they've been cheated. They can't have their voice. And that, to me, is not what this council was elected to do. The Liberal Democrat Manifesto is absolutely clear about what we do. And by not allowing their voices to be heard, which could have easily been done, I raised this privately to start with, so could we extend the deadline by 28 days? And was told no. Then I went and consulted with people in Woking and Guildford, both of whose CGR consultations closed more than 28 days ahead of where I suggested. So technically it is possible, which would have put to bed the matter. It's highly unlikely it would have changed the outcome, but this is not about changing the outcome. This is about allowing residents' voices to be heard. And when you receive that leaflet through the door telling you about the CGR, and it's the first thing you've heard, and then you find that you've been denied the right to have your voice heard because it's already closed, because the council has been unable to get a leaflet through on time, it's not fair. And it's about fairness. And, you know, there are numerous people. I notice Nick Stevens, our chief exec, who's well aware of my concerns around it, and a number of other senior people's concerns about it. And I'm being contacted by senior residents as well. There's a very simple answer to this, which was to extend the consultation for 28 days, and it would not have changed the outcome, but it would have allowed the public's voices to be heard. And that's what it's all about, allowing the public to be heard.
Thank you, Councillor. As I say, thank you for raising this. I'm very happy that you did, although I think I was actually one of a very small number of councillors who voted against the motion in question. But I certainly agree that when we vote, it should count. So I will certainly be asking that it sounds like it's already being looked into, but I do look forward to finding out what's gone on, and then we can analyse, A, is there a risk to the council, and B, what are the next steps?
And of course the urgency is, if we're being told that there's a window closing for being able to enact this, then do we need to consider an urgent Audit Standards and Risk Committee to hear those findings so that we don't run out of time? Because of course if this committee leaves it until the next meeting, we may be out of time to do things. So I think it's quite important to understand what that deadline is for being able to act and respond if we find that things have gone substantially wrong. It could be quite important. So it's just working out. I'm not looking for an answer tonight because I appreciate I only spoke to you this evening. I'm very grateful for your time this evening. But it's one thing to reflect on there, I think.
I agree. I think we will have to, I think we gather the information, look at what's gone on. I think we probably need to also consider whether this committee would be the appropriate body to be making recommendations for something to happen, because that's not generally within our gift, but I would be certainly happy to take guidance once we've got the information on where that sits. What I think is important is that we all just carry this forward and make sure that we do try to get to the bottom of it. Thank you. Is there anything further on the work programme? Never heard a work programme spoken about at such length. But thank you very much all for your time this evening. And with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you.